We're back on a Thursday night Law and Sporter. Justin Watkins is here. He was on vacation last week. We'll talk about his vacation in a little bit. Adam Hill is here. It's Cofield. We were just talking about a possible case that I might have in the future. I'm a little scared after that conversation. A little bit scared. I have a rundown. I have some things to hit. I want to get to a video here in a couple minutes, but I did want to hit on what Adam was just discussing a couple minutes ago. What's going on in the entertainment world? I know DMX has been all jacked up and in pretty bad shape for a while.
Yeah, it's been touch and go for a few days with DMX, and actually not for the first time. He's been on the doorstep several times over the last couple of years. He's definitely had some issues in his personal life for sure with addiction and other things. And it sounds like I was actually out. I haven't been like around my computer until just now to sit down. But it sounds like he passed. I know there are some people kind of fighting back and saying, there's no confirmation on that. We don't know for sure yet. But I saw a couple sources that seemed pretty reliable that I thought were true. So as you guys, when we first connected here, I was listening to some DMX. Just sucks. I mean, he's obviously had a big impact musically on a lot of different people. One of the things that I was going to say, and it's funny, funny is probably not the right, is Brady gets the call back to Tanya Roberts. I don't think this is that situation, but one of the things I was going to say, if we did discuss DMX, was the one criticism I hear from people of hip hop, and I love hip hop. I've always have, and even new hip hop, which isn't great, I still like follow it and kind of love it. The one thing people say is like, "Oh, everything sounds the same. It's all the same. Everybody's the same." I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot of very unique guys out there, but you couldn't say that about DMX. Like, that dude's style was unique, and his lyrics are very impactful and powerful, and everything that he's done. Like, as a person, I know there's been a lot of stuff that's gone on that isn't admirable necessarily, but musically he left a huge imprint on me and a lot of people. So just kind of sucks that it's going on. And I had some DMX playing as we started the stream here, but sucks.
Is there going to be a little bit of a pushback when people are celebrating him?
That's a good question. I mean, listen, he's had some run-ins with the law, but as Rick pointed out, he did a lot in the community, and I thought, there was a lot of good things that people had to say too. I know we have often heard the story of him hanging out in one of our friends' bars here in town locally, and just kind of being one of the guys. And somebody said like, "Hey, you look like DMX," and he was like, "Well, yeah." And then somebody else was like arguing that that's not really him, like he's fucking lying. And DMX is like, "All right, well, when you sober up in the morning, look at this photo, like you'll remember that it's me." So I mean, I've heard some good stories about him, but there's been some stuff that certainly he's gotten into, and when people are addicts and have issues with substance abuse, a lot of people blame them and don't have sympathy for them, and say it's their own thing, and that's true to some extent, but it's not always the case, and it's not always 100%. It's not an easy thing to break with, and I don't always blame people that are in that situation.
Right. All right, well, let's get into some of the other stories tonight from a legal standpoint. Things rolling downhill in a direction. I don't know that it's like this changes much in the case, but companies are making a decision, Justin, on Deshawn Watson, at least for now. Most of them are, or many of them are breaking off the relationship, but more commonly just kind of suspending it. So what do you think of that? And what do you think about the last week or so where it's been pretty crazy here because Tony Busby, the lawyer for the representing the people throwing the allegations at Deshawn Watson, basically said he's not going to work with the Houston police. He doesn't trust them. He doesn't want to present the evidence. Then you had Rusty Hardin come up with like 20 women who actually had Deshaun Watson's back. This week, we actually got to see the face of some of the women, and they told the story. So I guess your reaction to some of the advertising reaction and just in general where the case is right now.
Yeah, I think the advertisements, obviously, the sponsors know enough now that in all these contracts, they're going to say we have the right to suspend or pull the advertisement if there is any allegations made that can be embarrassing to the brand. They're not going to say have to prove or anything. There just has to be the controversy. I'm sure they've written in that language in every contract by now. And so I think they're fully within their rights. There's not going to be any sort of claim made from Watson back to them if ultimately he proves these allegations to be false or what have you. I'm way more interested in the legal back and forth on this. There are just a lot of red flags to me, as you know, not very often on this show do we talk about something that's in my wheelhouse of a type of case that I've handled before and been in these very situations before. This is that type of case. I have been in these situations before, representing victims of sexual assault, anonymous complaints being filed, media attention. I have been in this arena, and there's a lot of red flags to me coming out of the side of the accusers right now. Not wanting to work with the police. The police in theory could be your best friends in these situations. Now, it's also somewhat tricky, though. I will say this. If you work with the police, if ultimately you're trying to get a financial settlement out of a claim, if you work too well with the police and they go and are going to place criminal charges on Deshawn Watson and you want a quick settlement instead of actually trying the case through, then you may have lost your leverage, which is leverage that doesn't exist in Nevada anymore, but exists in a lot of states, which is basically, I'm going to buy your silence. You're not going to cooperate. You're not going to go to the police. You're going to settle with me, which is a very, very tricky thing, because in reality, if that's not done appropriately, it is an ethical problem. The attorneys involved in a case cannot agree to cover up a criminal act through financial means or a settlement. That's against ethical rules. They could be disbarred for that. So you have to walk a fine line. So if their actions of not working with the police tell me that the major driving force behind it is either publicity or an attempt at a quick settlement. Because if they were going to actually try to push this thing through to trial, you would want the police to do all of your investigative legwork for you. And if you get a conviction, then you got the easiest thing in the world. So that's a little bit troubling. The second thing that's really odd to me is that Rusty Hardin, Deshawn Watson's attorney, has requested the names of the anonymous plaintiffs. And Busby said, no, file a motion with the court. Now, I filed actions on behalf of anonymous sexual assault victims. It is an important policy that I think should exist in law, but let's be clear about what that provides. It allows me to publicly file anonymously, but the defendant knows who my clients are. They have to in order to defend themselves. It's not like I get to move the case through anonymously against the defendant and just say, well, you don't know who it is, but you did it. That's not how that works. And Texas, in Nevada, any victim of sexual assault can use a pseudonym to file a complaint. That's the rule. And publicly, in the case themselves, they have to disclose the identity to the defendant. In Texas, you can only file anonymously for a minor who's been a victim of sexual assault. That doesn't apply here. And there's ample case law in Texas that says you have to disclose people. You cannot file anonymously. Your case should be dismissed if you don't. So the fact that Busby was unwilling to do that, to disclose who the anonymous 22, well, it's anonymous 20 now, 2 have been identified, tells me again that either he doesn't feel strongly about some of them or is trying to leverage this to the maximum public effect or quick settlement. It just does not look like the roadmap to a long extended legal battle that you believe you're going to win. That's what it looks like to me from an outsider. I don't know any of these people. I don't know any of the attorneys. I've spoken to nobody. I'm just looking at the court filings and looking at the press out and the social media that BuzzFeed's putting out there, and Hardin's attempt to respond to that. And last point I would say is, even if they were within their rights to file anonymously in Texas, which I don't think that they are, according to my little bit of research, but even if they were, you don't get to then go do a whole bunch of public statements and PR. You can lose your ability to file anonymously if you then go use your anonymous name to go attack the person outside of the courtroom. And there's ample case law on that. If you're filing anonymously, you kind of need to tamper it down and keep your mouth shut.
I have a lot of questions, I guess, on this. The first one, when you say file anonymously, obviously Deshawn Watson and his group doesn't know. His lawyer doesn't know who the accusers are. Would it be filed with their name with the court and then redacted? Or are they just filed and said, like, woman A, woman B, woman C, woman D?
You file, well, these are all separate actions that they filed. So you file as literally Jane Doe. And if you were going to file several plaintiffs together, you would name them Jane Doe 1, Jane Doe 2, Jane Doe 3, so on and so forth. But like I said, in Nevada and Texas's law is even more strict. That's just what the public sees. So every time there is a filing, there's a reference to Jane Doe. If there is a reference to the actual person's name in a document that gets filed, it must be redacted and sealed, right? So redacted, not sealed. And so the idea is that the public will never know who this person is because they don't want the stigma. They want to be re-victimized. They don't want to be victimized twice. All the press going to them, the people that they know and love figure out that they've been raped or abused as a child or an adult. They don't want the stigma associated with that to re-victimize the victim. But the defendant knows, like, the first contact is from defense counsel is, hey, I've been retained. Please provide me the names of the people. Cool. That's what you have to do. I mean, you get some protections. You ensure that they're not going to release him unless they get a court order. There's some protections, but by and large, you give them the names.
So I think to the question, I saw Casey Rowley asked, "Is he going to serve time?" Like, they haven't even gone to the police, so this is not a criminal proceeding whatsoever. And that kind of does lead into my question, because I threw out a random theory last time we were doing this when Steve wasn't here, and the more I read about this, I think it's absolutely true. But I'll get into that in a second. The question, I guess, would be, could Watson have done something that he is liable for civilly that wouldn't be considered illegal criminally?
I mean, I have to say that the answer is probably yes, but I'm trying to think of a factual scenario that would fall into that category. Oh, well, of course, that anything that's not physical contact related, right? So if part of the claim was a breach of contract because, the understanding of the services that were being paid for is not what he attempted to get, that's not the claim. But a breach of contract claim, you don't go to a criminal court for any sort of breach of contract. Intentional infliction or negligent infliction of emotional distress, which is one of the claims, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, depending on the basis for saying that you put this person through emotional distress, can be civilly actionable, but would not create criminal penalties. Now, if the emotional distress was created by an assault, well, then of course we have a criminal. That's the allegation here. I think. Like I said, I've read all of the complaints, and it's not clear to me exactly what happened in any of these scenarios and how the timeline moved from point A to point Z. There is a lot of skipping of steps along the way and describing the actions.
Justin, you're a Seinfeld guy, right?
The yada, yada, yada?
Yeah, it's the yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
It's the yada yada yada, and then it was over. Like, wait, what was the yada yada? That was the most important part. Like, and I think that kind of applies here. So, I'll just, for the people that weren't here last time that we talked about this, that are maybe listening now. My thoughts, a lot of this, and again, nobody knows. We know nothing. I'm just saying from reading about as much as I can and looking into as much as I can. Like, Deshawn Watson, this is previous. This is not because of this case. Deshawn Watson notoriously is kind of a weird, kind of like nerd guy. Now, you would think NFL quarterback, like, probably not an issue anymore. I don't know if that changes everything. Like, he's still this weird kind of nerd that is kind of socially awkward. He also is in a relationship. And to me, his move, like the way he gets girls, is like, hey, massage me. And then here it is. Are we doing this or not? Like, that's kind of the MO that it seems to be here. And I think in his mind, he doesn't see something wrong with it. It's like, either you do it or you don't. Like, here's where we are. Is this going to happen or is it not? And I think from the women's perspective, they could feel pressured by that and uncomfortable, of course. But I think this is what he does. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying this is what he does. And now you've got this pattern of behavior that we've seen some of the masseuses come out and say, like, great client. And then we see all these suits being filed on the other side. So, like, to me, like, I don't know if there's a criminal case there. So, like, the whole going to the cops or not, I think they could defeat their whole purpose, their whole case, by going to the cops, and the cops are like, that's not assault. Like, there's nothing there. And then, where are they? What are they left with?
So a couple things about that. Number one, I did see a lot of pushback on Twitter when Rusty Hardin released the 18 or 20 women who said he's a model client and can't ever see him doing anything. They said, hey, just because he was fine with you doesn't mean that he wasn't with everybody else. And that's, sort of the Me Too movement response to this. And I get that. I'm with that. Just because he's a good neighbor or a good teammate doesn't mean he can't sexually assault a woman.
Right,
like,
of course,
nobody's, that's not revealed. But in this instance, the way the complaints were written and the way they were laid out, they're clearly attempting to establish a modus operandi, an MO for what he does and how he assaults women. And so I think it's important in that instance to at least show that that is not universally held by anybody who massaged him. And so it's not, I think they're really trying to defeat an MO, and they were probably, I don't know, reaching out to everybody he massaged or had a massage from in order to figure out who these women are, like who responds, who still talks to me. Oh, this person doesn't talk to me anymore. They might be one of them, right? Like
smoke them out.
Yeah, I think so. So that's sort of interesting. But I will say, I think the allegations that they put in the complaint, if true, would rise to the level of criminal assault. If it's one thing to just sort of be bare naked, would they say that that's assault? No, I don't think that they would. I think that they would say, hey, inappropriate, but it's not criminally actionable. But the allegation is that then he maneuvered himself to ensure that his penis touched their hand or touched their body in some way. I think that's assault. And then the one instance in which they claimed that oral sex occurred, they said guided her to oral sex. And I just don't know what that means. I don't know if that meant physical. I don't know if that meant verbal. And that is the complaint that has the most yada, yada, yada of all of them. It goes from step 1 to step 10, and there's no description of how we got there. So I don't know about that one. But obviously, if there was forced oral sex, that's rape.
I don't like Brady's question, but I will follow up on it. He said, are there physical similarities, differences between those who say assault occurred and that he was a good client? I don't like it for this reason. One, the one woman that spoke out, one of the women that spoke out, I saw a lot online just attacking her, like, she's ugly. There's no way Deshawn Watson would do this. I don't think this is about level of attractiveness to him, first of all. And I don't think it's relevant to the case. But I'm going to ask you, just because we're doing this podcast, we like to throw out random things. could they make some kind of a claim of like, yeah, the ugly ones he's not doing this to, so they don't really matter when they say he's a good client?
I think it's relevant in a certain context along that line of thinking, because of the way he goes about finding all of his massage providers, masseuses, I don't know, is on Instagram. So, I mean, if looks didn't matter at all, why wouldn't he just drive up to a place or just go in, Google or something? Why is he going on Instagram to find somebody to get a massage from? So that would imply to me that some aspect of the looks or body or something matter to him. At least that would be an argument that can be made. That, but to then take that to the level and say, well, he doesn't do it for the ugly ones and he does for the pretty ones, or what have you. I don't know that leap would be there, but I do think the Instagram recruiting seems to imply that looks matter.
I really was not. I'm in a group text where, it is a truly, yeah. I was in a group text where a lot of people were like, it's a lot of football fans, and they were like, oh man, Deshaun's not going to play. He's going to be done. His career's over. And then when the first accuser that came out publicly and she wasn't attractive, they all universally were just like, he didn't do it. He's innocent. He's fine. Like, it's clearly she's lying. I'm like, okay, let's calm down on just making this judgment that just because you don't think she's attractive, this couldn't have happened. That's foolish. It's ridiculous.
Right. I agree with that. Especially if you can connect the dots on all the other aspects of it, which we're far from, right? The fact that he's not releasing the names to Rusty Harden, but it continues to go out there publicly and start talking about all these things and trying to play the press and media and say, you need to start asking some questions about this and that. They're questions that can't fairly be answered by Deshawn Watson when he doesn't know who the accuser is. Just again, there's a red flag there that seems to me that the purpose is not justice for women who have been victims of assault. That does not seem to be the driving force behind their actions. I'm making an assumption based on, if these women came to me, that would be my goal, to get them justice. Now, would that mean ultimately at the end of the day a big payday? Yeah, because that's the only way the civil justice system works, right? It only makes people whole through monetary compensation. It only punishes people through financial burdens and means. So, but that would be the driving force. And if that was the way I was going to go, I wouldn't be doing the things that they're doing. I just don't understand the moves.
What about Brady's question earlier? Since Watson knows the accusers, if they file suit, are they allowed to out the accuser? And what's the penalty for doing so?
Yeah, so that would be contempt of court. You could be jailed, you could be fined. That's a serious violation of a court order. So I would expect that there would be jail time and serious sanctions. Let's see. Whatever. I don't know. Like, sexual assault cases are, in my opinion, 99% about the victim, how they present, how they tell the story, what their recollections like, their past matters, and I've never met any of these women, so I can't tell you if they're a type of case that I would take or not. But when somebody comes in to my office and says they've been sexually assaulted, there is a whole different type of intake that we take with that. We do a lot of things to try to make them feel comfortable. Number one, they don't have to come to my office. I let them pick the place that's they're most comfortable with to talk to me about what happened. But we get everything. You get some cases that's like, hey, at my office, the boss, came by and touched me on the shoulder to get my attention. He's always tapping me on the shoulder to get my attention when I'm even looking at him. I'm like, well, that's not for me. That's that's for an employment attorney. That's going to work on a hostile work environment based on the repetitiveness of it. That's not an assault. I was raped. And when you're dealing with victims of rape, you don't shove them in front of a camera and lights and media. At least I don't. My fear is to re-victimize them. And the worst thing that can happen for me is to have somebody come to me for help and to leave and feel like they were worse off for meeting me or retaining my services. That's my biggest fear. And so I just disagree with the way it's gone. But again, I don't know these women. I don't know what their goal is. And so maybe Busby's doing exactly what they want.
When you were just describing the hostile work environment situation and not being able to take the case, I hope that Steve had the same exact thought that I did, because we literally just had to take a test on this. And I knew that. I was like, it has to get certified before it could be claimed in a civil suit. There has to be certification from like the employment board. I learned that this week.
The EEOC. You have to get a right to file. Yeah,
I got that question right.
Also, you remembered it, so the test actually hit home for you. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh.
I already forgot. I failed that test like 38 times, and I was taking it at 2 a.m. and I'm like, I think I'm going to give up. I'm just going to quit. I can't pass this test. I
took it during the VGK game.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, I'll admit at a certain point, I started looking. I'm like, I could just look these questions up on the internet. So, I learned.
I thought it was timed. I was timed. I read the whole thing. What am I doing? I didn't know I could actually look them up.
I actually did go through the whole thing, but at the end when I kept missing the questions, I was like, all right, let me just type it in.
Pathetic.
I couldn't concentrate. I might have had too many of my Montuckies.
Yeah.
The cold snacks got to me.
The cold snacks. We've already been discussing the police element of this, but I did want to build off the question. So when will the police get involved? Obviously, the accusers would have to go to the police, but is there a point where the police would just be like, all right, this is insane, we have to open this up?
Well, now they're certainly going to contact the 2 names that are out there.
Okay.
Right? They can't ignore that. And they've said they're looking into the allegations, right? Okay. So they're gonna start there. But if they don't cooperate, if Busby says don't talk to the police and they don't cooperate, what the hell else do they got to go on? And go talk to Deshawn, and he's going to say, I have no idea what they're talking about. Like, hey, give me your phone. Go get a warrant. All right. Well, I guess we're done here.
we also in the past have talked about, frivolous lawsuit claims and that sort of thing. If 4 or 5 of these are legitimate and the rest are just Busby trying to generate a whole bunch of stuff, like, can it still be frivolous if some of them were accurate?
Okay. Well, each case is separate, right?
Okay.
So
I keep thinking it's like one big case.
No. So, 4 are legit, 18 are frivolous. Then there's going to be 18 dismissals with sanctions that the attorney can be compelled to pay the sanction on, and the alleged victim, the plaintiff. Yeah.
And if Busby, say 7 or 8 are just kind of proven completely false, ridiculous, thrown out, and Busby gets sanctions, and the other ones are still playing out, can that be used against him?
No, I don't think so. Certainly they're not going to be able to use their claim of a modus operandi to reference each other claim, right? So each case would have to be tried individually based on that facts, as if that was the only assault that occurred. They would not be able to, on a trial of, say, the first claim, talk about, and there's 21 other claims. No way. You couldn't do that anyway, except for proving a modus operandi. That's what I thought was so risky from Watson's standpoint about the way the complaints were worded. Is every one of them was contacted through Instagram. He brought his own towel to each one of the massages. The towel was super small. They all had these same calling cards. And so that to me was an indicator. They want to get modus operandi exemption to talk about each of these cases in each one of these cases. So trial 1 talks about the other 21. Trial 2 talks about the other 21, so on and so forth. But if a bunch of them get thrown out, then your chances of being able to do that are slim to none. So literally the case would be set on its own of this is the only assault that ever occurred. And if that's the case, and your facts are, he was nude when I walked in, but I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. So I told him to cover up. I started the massage. He started to angle towards me and take off the cover. I continued to give him the benefit of the doubt. And then he maneuvered himself so his penis touched my hand, and that traumatized me. If that's the only thing that a jury ever hears, and they don't know about any of the other allegations, they don't know about the other 21 claims, I don't think that that's a case that's going to garner a lot of money.
What about this one? If they don't cooperate with the cops, does it lessen the claim?
Not directly, no, because in a civil claim, you can't talk about any police investigation. The fact that a police investigation did not take place. You can't say on the defense, well, the police said it was fine, or the police didn't look into it. You can't do that. You could talk about, but it does weaken it because they're not doing your legwork for you, right? Indirectly, I want to partner with law enforcement to combine our resources, tell them what I'm hearing. Hopefully they tell me what they're hearing, and see if we can get to the bottom of it and figure out what's going on. That's the goal. So indirectly, yes, I think it lessens it, because I think ultimately your case isn't as strong as it would have been had you, assuming the case is legitimate, right? Like assuming the case is legitimate, I think you want the police on your side. And if they do pursue a claim and there's a conviction, you can reference that in the civil claim.
You couldn't even ask the question, did you go to the police, or what did the police, what was the police investigation like, to get them to say like, well, I didn't go to them?
Oh, you can certainly ask the question, did you report it to the police? For sure.
Okay.
But you can't say, and then what did the police do?
Can you say, why didn't you?
Well, sure. I mean, that's going to have to be the response, right? I mean, I don't know that I would ask. If I'm the defense attorney, I'm not asking the follow-up why. I'm saying, you didn't go to the police, did you? You didn't talk to anybody about this other than when you met with an attorney 4 months later. Yep. And then I leave it, right? Because then the jury's like, if I got assaulted, I'd go to the fucking police right away. And I just leave it hanging out there because I don't know what they're going to say ultimately if I say why not.
I don't necessarily mean to veer off of this because I think we have more questions on it. But while it's popping in my head, and I think about this every time I watch a real trial on television. But I'll ask you, because obviously everybody is watching the Chauvin trial right now, or many people are tuning into at least parts of it. Like, the way questions and answers work in a trial is maddening to me. It's maddening. And like, you can't have like a normal dialogue, right? And what I mean by that, like, for an example, they're talking to somebody that was a witness, and we're like, were you angry at the time? And it's like, yeah, I was watching somebody get killed. Like, that's a legitimate answer. That's a fair answer. And yet you get the objection sustained on those of like, that wasn't the question. Like, bro, if you're asking me a question, I'm going to tell you what the answer is. I'm not going to limit it to one word or, just directly answering your question. And I don't understand why in trials it has to be that way. I mean, I guess I understand, procedures and that sort of thing. But like, if you're asking me a question, like, I have a right to answer the question fully.
No, you don't. Not according to the rules. I'll explain that in just a second. I want to address Havasu George's comment there real quick that says, if you can bring up the history of the accuser, you can't typically bring up the history of the accuser. It's going to be part of discovery. And if it's relevant for some reason, then you could. Like if they're saying that they've suffered mentally and before they were completely fine and you found out that they were a victim of a rape or a child abuse 18 years before, and be like, you were fine before? Like, you were raped when you were, 10 years ago. How were you fine? And now this affected you. So you could in very, very, very limited circumstances, but generally speaking, you can't do that. So as to your questions, the person who's presenting you as a witness gets to ask you the open-ended question, right? That's your opportunity to fully explain yourself. And they always have the last chance to ask you questions to follow up. So on cross-examination, the court allows the cross-examining attorney to ask a leading yes or no question. Isn't it true that? Boom. The answer to that is either yes or no. If the answer to that cannot possibly be yes or no, then you state, I can't answer that yes or no. And the judge will ask you why you can't answer that yes or no. And then you indicate it better be freaking good, because if you burn the judge on that one time, he's not going to let you veer off again. So the judge will instruct you. It's a yes or no question. You have to answer the question yes or no. But the attorney who presented you as a witness then gets to follow up and say, why were you mad? Right? It's up to that attorney to clean up the mess and be like, because if they say, you were mad, weren't you? And I'm like, yeah, I was mad. I was watching, somebody died. Like, objection sustained. Okay, cool. And then obviously when I'm the prosecutor, I'm getting up right after that saying, why were you mad? They didn't want, the defense did not want the jury to hear what you had to say about why you were mad. Tell the jury, why were you mad? And hit a home run with that. And Brady asked, did I ever ask a question in court that I didn't know the answer to? Yeah, all the time. This is the cardinal rule. I bring it all the time. Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like it should be, especially when most witnesses are, a lot of them are, scientists or cops or, experts that do this all the time. Like, I feel like if you're just a regular person on a stand, you should have leeway to answer the question. Like, an answer to the question is very rarely yes or no.
But you know what will happen if that happens? It'll be like when you see a politician interviewed on the news. They never answer the question. They answer a question that they want to answer. So this is the way to fix that. You have to. Otherwise, trials will take forever. And people will just talk and blab about whatever they want. They'd be like, I wasn't finished. And I'm just going to keep talking about whatever the fuck I feel like talking about. It's the cross-examining attorney's right to get an answer to the question that they ask. And if they ask a yes or no question, the answer yes or no. If it literally cannot be answered with a yes or no, then you got to say it. But almost every question could be answered yes or no. Were you mad? Yes.
So could you, what if the question is, well, how are you feeling at that point?
Oh,
right?
Then hey, that's open-ended. That is.
And then
not,
if you're like, I was angry because I was watching somebody get killed. Yep. So like it's the burden on the cross-examining attorney to make sure it's only yes or no questions.
Oh yeah, if they fuck it up, if they it's called opening the door. That you'll hear that all the time. Objection, he's not answering my question. The other guy said he opened the door. It's open-ended question. That's right. Overruled. Answer the question. And they're allowed to, and then the witness gets all empowered, feels fucking great, and just blabs a whole bunch of shit.
Fair enough. It just bothers me every time I watch real trials.
I think the George Floyd trial that's playing out in front of everybody, the Chauvin trial, is I think there's excellent examples of what to do and what not to do on display for everybody to see, and it doesn't take you an expert to figure out who's doing better at lawyering and who's doing better at expert witnessing.
Well, if you don't want to say it, I don't know. The defense attorney fucking blows. Is he like? I don't know what his situation. Did somebody raise money to get him, or is he a union? Is he a cop union attorney? Like, I don't know where he came from. He stinks.
I don't know where he's at either. And I've heard some sort of conspiracy theories out there that he's intentionally being obtuse to make the argument that this is so complicated that it's just not believable. Like, wait. Like, you're saying that he's trying to breathe through his knuckles? I don't understand. Like, but COVID? He's got COVID? When you lay down, when you have pneumonia, that's not better? That's better? Okay. Like, he's just going down this. That's what I've heard. I don't believe it. Nobody wants to look like an idiot. And
do you agree with what I saw this tweet yesterday from Xavier, our buddy who's on Thursdays, and he said Chauvin lawyer crossing himself on cross-examination, making his client look more guilty, asking dumb questions and getting checked by witnesses.
Well, yes, and I mean these are top-notch witnesses, by the way, right? Like they are some. They've done a great job preparing these witnesses. None of them is it. Well, that's not true. Some of the lay witnesses at the beginning, it may have been their first time testifying, but these experts are top notch. That's their career, is testifying on cases, and they're really freaking good at it. So you're gonna probably look a little bit like an idiot. The question will be, is what does their defense look like, and who are their experts, and how does that testimony come out? Because when these trials go on long, a lot of times some of the home runs that you hit in the first and second inning are forgotten about by the seventh and eighth.
Could it be possibly being terrible to set up a inadequate representation appeal?
I don't think so. Well, I don't know why that does anybody any good. I mean, inadequate representation does not free you. You don't get to go home. You have to go through trial again.
Right. You get to get a different jury. Like, you give this jury a shot just to say not guilty just because he's a cop, and that's what happens. And if it doesn't work, then you get a free appeal and a free redo.
Yeah, ineffective assistance of counsel is a very high burden to meet, and you need to show that that ineffectiveness of counsel was the cause of the outcome.
Adam, have you not watched all the documentaries you talk about with the ineffective counsel and the challenge of getting a retrial? It's impossible.
It's super hard.
Sure, this guy is really
better.
Well, and you know what happens. You know what's funny about that?
By the way, is he worse than the assholes in Manitowoc?
No, but he's not going to stacked against them anyway.
Okay.
But here, two things happen when you try to make an ineffective assistance of counsel claim. One, your former attorney and the prosecutor become best friends because the prosecutor's number one witness is your former attorney. And the prosecutor gets up there too and is like, oh man, I thought he was a really formidable attorney. He was really good. He did a great job. I mean, I thought he took it a lot farther than I would have. It was a real challenge. And the defense attorney, your former attorney, is going to talk about how hard he worked on the case, what you did as a witness to fuck it all up, right? Talk about a plea deal that he had on the table that you walked away from, all this shit, right? Because ultimately, if you're successful at that, now you've got a civil claim against him for legal malpractice, and nobody wants to pay out on a legal malpractice claim. So it would stretch the imagination for me to think that this guy wants to look like a fool in front of the entire world to try to get a cop off on an ineffective assistance of counsel appeal in 5 fucking years from now. Like, I just, no way. This guy's going to be locked up for so many years and you still got to practice law and you're going to look like a buffoon? No, please.
How bad would it have to get over the course of the next couple weeks of the trial for them to throw the Hail Mary of putting him on the stand? Like, they'd have to be way behind, right?
Yeah, I think I think it's very unlikely you're ever going to see that scenario. I think let's see what their experts, how they hold up under cross-examination. I mean, we're only on one side right now. And so everybody always feels like, oh, there's no way they can defend this case when all you hear about is from the prosecution. Let's see what it looks like. And I think that they would rather rely on a jury not convicting a cop than to actually get up there and give them a reason to. Like, if he gets up there and starts talking, they're like, oh, we fucking hate this guy. Like, never mind. He's gone.
All right, we all good on that one?
Yep.
I think so.
Let's talk about a guy who's you want to root for. There's nothing worse than being defamed. Poor OJ was going after the Cosmopolitan for defamation. I think the Cosmopolitan's defense was like, you have no rep left. You can't be defamed. You're basically a horrible person. The note or the story out is that they settled. Malcolm Laverne, his attorney, who's a peach, wouldn't say anything. I'm sure Justin can tell us why he's not commenting on this. So any idea, any speculation? Did you see any information on this? But What could the settlement have been?
Oh my gosh! Even if I had heard speculation, which I had not, there's no way I would say it publicly. That's inappropriate. It would get somebody in trouble. Because if there has been a settlement, I don't think them saying it's resolved means that there is a settlement. I really do not. It not in this instance. I mean, but I do think that their argument, if their only defense was you had no reputation to be harmed, it doesn't matter if we told lies, is a bad defense. Only because we know that OJ is marketable, right? He can get like endorsements and paid appearances, and I mean he can. So he does have value. And if that's your only argument, that who gives a fuck if we lied because you're OJ, that wouldn't have been good. Now, if they had some, I'm sure they had video, right? If they have some video to show and it says that backs up their story, then, they show OJ's people and they say, hey, walk away. We won't say anything. You don't say anything. It's all confidential. Then we're fine. And they put it to bed that way. I could see that being a scenario. But if I had to guess, I'd say there was probably some amount of money paid. I'm just guessing because we never saw any video. We never saw any surveillance. I don't know what the employees said. So right. The fact that they settled the case without any real public filings, actually, maybe I'm talking myself out of that. Maybe that leans towards just a walk away.
If you said that it would be a bad claim to say you're not marketable, so there's nothing to damage, that would be a bad claim. Yeah. What about if you made the claim like, hey, us saying that you're drunk in public and being kind of wild actually helps you, like, in your image of trying to be like marketable again, of like going out and making appearances and that sort of thing. Like, we helped you.
I think that defense is legitimate in some situations in which you see a defamation lawsuit where it was like, hey, this person was completely unknown and now they're famous, right? Like, hey, we didn't hurt you, we helped you. Yeah. I wouldn't buy that here. I don't think that, OJ being drunk and kicked out of the Cosmopolitan adds any value to whatever limited swath of people are interested in retaining his services or supporting his endeavors. I don't see it.
Yeah, I was thinking more of a general claim, like a complete unknown gets like into it with a celebrity or something, and you say something about them, and they're like, "That's not what happened. That's defamation. Like, you destroyed my reputation." And they're like, "No, you're now doing club appearances. Nobody knew who you were 3 weeks ago. This helped." Like, that would be valid, though, right? If like you actually were helped by something like this.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that the interaction, albeit false, did not actually result in any damage to reputation or financial damages. In fact, it enhanced your financial wherewithal. Yeah, that's fine. That's absolutely. I mean, to prove defamation, you need damages is a necessary component. You have to show you were damaged, and if you can't, then you lose the claim, even if all the rest was true.
So am I wrong in thinking if he got a cash settlement, what's the point? Wouldn't the check immediately be written to the Goldman family? And wouldn't that open him up? Wouldn't that open him up for? I don't know. Would you at that point? Are you doing a deep dive on what kind of monies he has? Like, where's your other money? I know a lot of it's protected. His pension's protected.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer to this, but it would depend upon what kind of court orders the Goldmans have. If the Goldman's court order says any income, there would be a very strong argument that this was not income, right? That this was compensation for damage done to reputation. And so it's actually just making him whole. It's not creating income. And in the eyes of the IRS, it's not income. It would not be taxable because, it's compensation for a harm done. Different. If in a civil suit you're compensated for lost wages as a result of an injury, that is income, that is taxable, but not for the personal injuries. Careful with that autoplay.
Yeah.
I was trying to load something up. God, TikTok's a nightmare. Plus, it's the wrong video. I wanted to play you guys a video. It's goofy. It's one of these TikTok videos where someone makes a statement and then someone reacts to it, and the guy's trying to tell a joke about the person. The original subject looks like a character from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, so he starts playing music in the background. But I thought it was interesting what she said, because I think a lot of people are thinking this, and then he started answering a bunch of questions, and I just wanted to see what your reaction was on this one.
Because I'm going to throw this out because Brady just asked that question, so I'll phrase it like this: since OJ can't technically make an income, right? I mean, it would theoretically, if that's what it says, that his income goes to the Goldmans. Could he say, "All right, I'm going to work for whatever Hard Rock this weekend"? They're not even there. Whatever. So I'll use them because they're gone. I'm going to work for Hard Rock this weekend. I'm going to do some appearances. They're going to pay me. And then we're going to have a deal where they don't pay me. I sue them to get the money. And then they pay me. And then it's not it can't be gone after by the Goldmans because it was from a lawsuit, not from income.
Okay, so a couple issues. Number one, I don't know what the order says, right?
I know. I'm just saying, theoretically.
Yeah. Number two, that would be deemed income. He was not paid for providing services. That's income that he's suing to recover. Three, if you conspire with another person to defraud, to create a false lawsuit and defraud the court, you do get in trouble for that. That is not something that's like okay to do. And obviously, it would be brought up in the Goldmans action, which still has jurisdiction over the collection of money there. So, very unlikely scenario. And no, I don't. Under that scenario, for sure not. I mean, if he were going to do it in a way that could get around the income, he would have his friend, find somebody that they don't know, that he doesn't know, right, get in the car, hit him in a crosswalk, claim huge damages, get a huge payout, and say it's all personal injury recovery. That's
or could he do it like, hey, without even saying it, like, hey, I'm going to work for you for free this weekend, Hard Rock. Like, I'm going to make an appearance. We're cool. Again, I'm using Hard Rock because they're gone. I'm gonna make an appearance for you this weekend for free. No worries about it. And then, I just so happened to fall while I was on your property. So here I'm going to file this claim. You're going to pay me, which is actually payment, but I'm getting it through suing you, not through income.
Right. That could be a way.
Good.
But
OJ, call me.
Yeah, but let's also let's pick the Hard Rock and say there's different types of insurance policies that exist for casinos and stuff like that. Some casinos, their insurance policies will pick up from $1, meaning if you make a claim against them, they send it to their insurance company. The insurance company pays out the claim. Now you're committing insurance fraud if you're conspiring to do that. Some of their insurance policies have what's called a self-insured retention, which means the insured pays on a claim to a certain dollar amount each time. These are, big companies that could afford that kind of stuff. So might have a self-insured retention of $50,000 or $100,000, which means insurance doesn't kick in unless the claim pays out for over 50 or 100 grand. So if they had an SIR, say, of 50,000, and you just coordinate with OJ, hey, you fall, you make a claim against me, I'll pay you 50 grand. We're all good. We haven't committed insurance fraud. What you do, how you classify that to the Goldmans is not my business.
All right. So I'm going to set this video up. This lady's claiming that she doesn't have to get the vaccine for this reason. If you can hear me, you all good?
So for those of you who don't know, my Constitution says you can't force me to get a vaccine.
Okay. So you understood what she said, right?
There's not a fucking vaccine thing in the Constitution. There's no mention of vaccines anywhere.
So for those of you who don't know, my Constitution says you can't force me to get a vaccine.
Okay. So now this guy's going to school her. Now he's, like I said, he's going to mock on her for looking like a character on the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So ignore that because I think his message is good. Like I almost wanted to message the guy like, dude, I think this is really good, but like it's this. So we'll listen to him.
You know what? I don't know where Riff Raff from Rocky Horror Picture Show here got her law degree, but she's not wrong. You can't be forced to take the vaccine. You also said, though, that HEPA says you can't ask if you had the vaccine. That's not true. Anyone can ask you. They just can't look at your medical records. But here's the problem. See, you don't have the right to do certain things like, say, get on a plane. That's not a right. So if they say you have to prove you've had the vaccine to fly and you say no, you don't fly. If a hospital or assisted living center says you can't come in without proof of vaccine and you don't provide it, you don't have to come in. If a grocery store says you can't come in without it, you don't shop there. If another country says you can't cross our borders without having it, you don't cross the border. So go ahead, don't get the vaccine. I don't exactly want you on my flight singing Time Warp and touch me.
So there you go. Did you like what he was saying there? Was anything off?
Well, in general, in theory, he's right, which is that yes, we can't force you to have a vaccine, but we can make it super inconvenient for you if you don't. Right? Private companies can do that. The flight issue is a little bit tricky to me because we got the FAA. Airspace is ours, right? And we regulate that. So can it get tricky there constitutionally? It could. I think, let me put it this way. I think the federal government could issue an order to the FAA that says you can't prevent non-vaccinated people from flying, kind of like what Florida's trying to do. I think that they do have the power to do that. But I do think that if they came down and said, you must be vaccinated in order to fly within the United States and to go abroad and to come into the United States, like I said on the show yesterday, this is a established law and precedent in the United States since 1905. The Supreme Court has weighed in and says the government can mandate you to vaccinate in order to provide government services. And that issue, it was school, that they can require vaccination records before allowing you to enroll in school, which is a right. Certainly, freedom of travel within the United States is recognized right as well, not necessarily by plane, but going from state to state. So I think that they absolutely could require vaccinations for flight. That's the only one that gives me a little bit of pause of the examples that he gave is there is some federal involvement in flights, and they could, if DeSantis was president, issued an executive order that says, airlines, you cannot request this information.
Are we going to do this? I mean, I know there's a lot of issues related to getting proof and the whole quote unquote vaccine passport things. Like, are we going to move toward requiring vaccinations in certain facets of life?
I think that depends on what happens this fall. Right now, we're not going to see. I don't think we're going to see much of that. You will see some of it, I think, for international travel. I know Hawaii is pushing. I know that's not international, but the only state I'm aware of that's pushing for a vaccine passport is Hawaii. They certainly have a pretty dang good reason why. You can't get there unless you fly. I mean, I'm sure you could boat, but nobody boats there. But
I'm going to.
If everybody, if our numbers go down and cases go down and this all the death numbers go down to zero and we're not seeing any serious injuries or deaths or hospitalizations or deaths, and only say half the population's vaccinated, will they then require proof of vaccination for schools moving forward? I would say probably not, right? Just like they don't require flu vaccination records to enroll in school each year. If this is going to be a seasonal thing, but no longer is deadly because of the vaccinations, and it has never really been deadly to children, then I don't think we'll see it there. But if half the population gets vaccinated, we're at a third of the United States population has now had at least one dose. Over 20% are fully vaccinated. If we get to that point of, say, 50-50, but our numbers start going back up as the fall comes in, then I think you will start seeing, hey, you got to show us a vaccination card if you're going to travel here, or you got to quarantine for these number of days. And that's ultimately what Hawaii is leaning towards. You don't have to quarantine or get a proof of a negative test to fly to Hawaii. This isn't current law. This is what they're talking about. Or you don't have to prove a test. You don't have to be vaccinated, but you have to quarantine if you come for 14 days. That's sort of your option. So you're not being forced to do any one of them, but you have to do one.
As Brady mentioned, he was, I believe, not to give anything away, I believe he was in Cabo this week. He said you need to take a test at the hotel before you come back to the U.S. So, I mean, if we're already doing that, like, I would say vaccines are better than even testing. But I mean, let's just go. The problem that I have with vaccine passports is not really the same that most people have. As we mentioned before, my biggest problem is, I don't think everybody has equal access to getting the vaccine right now. So that's my biggest issue, is that you're discriminating against people that maybe don't have the internet or aren't savvy at trying to figure out how to get their appointments and that sort of thing. Other people are like, it's an infringement of my rights. I really don't give a fuck about that. You're doing it for everyone. Like, this is a societal thing. You're getting it for other people. That's what we're doing here. So if you don't want to get it, that's fine. I don't think anybody should be forced to get the vaccine. Stay the fuck home.
Yeah, I mean, once we talked about this on the show yesterday too, I think we're in a weird sort of 30-day window here where, because of access, I'm in a position where I'm willing to hear the arguments of people who haven't been vaccinated. But in about 30 days, maybe 60 at the most, certainly we're in the window now in Nevada, certainly 30 days in Nevada, I'm going to be like, okay, open things back up. Everybody who's wanted the vaccine has the vaccine. And the people who didn't get the vaccine, they're risking their own damn lives at this point. Like, that's on them now. Like, if they want to go out and get sick and die, they fucking made that choice. But us vaccinated people are not going to get sick, and we're not going to die. We still don't have a single instance of a vaccinated person being hospitalized. We do have a handful of incidents where vaccinated people tested positive, but nobody said the drug was 100%. Nobody said that. So there's going to be some people that test positive, but there has yet to be a single case of a hospitalization of vaccinated people. So once the vaccine is widely available to everybody, I say we open everything up, and the people who didn't want to get the vaccine, they took that risk for themselves at that point. They're not risking anybody else's life, because that person, whoever they come in contact with, had the opportunity to get the vaccine too and didn't.
What about this one? Go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
I mean, I was going to say, you kind of still are. Like, again, it's not, the vaccine is not 100%. It's good. It's way better than anybody thought. I'm comfortable with, like, really, really solid efficacy numbers, which are far better than anybody believed they could be. And that's fine. But there is still a chance, like, that people that are vaccinated could still get sick. And if you're not getting it and you're out and about, like, hey, I don't have to do it. I'll let everybody else get it. I'm fine. I don't have to do it. Like, you are still putting other people at risk by spreading it more and having it spread around. Like,
at that point, if literally at that point we have still, with hundreds of millions of people being vaccinated, and we still don't have a single instance of a vaccinated person going to the hospital, I'm not buying that argument, right? People get sick with the cold and the flu all the fucking time. We're not going to hold people responsible we're not contact tracing every fucking illness that works its way around. If that tide changes and people who are vaccinated are getting sick and dying, well then, okay, I'm willing to hear that argument. But there's literally not been a single instance of a vaccinated person going to a hospital. So, or even being sick. We've just had some tested positives. We haven't even had a sick person. So I'm not buying that argument yet. Could change.
What about this part? If it is only 6 months, come, for most of us, September, October, at that point, is it a new game where you're like, I'm not comfortable being around people who never got it?
Oh, for sure. All this can change based on, they ran this thing out there super quick. You got to be open to the idea of new evidence coming in and not tying yourself to some opinion that you voiced on a podcast 6 months prior, just to say I had it right. You got to listen to the evidence. You gotta see what the numbers are. If, like I said, I'm basing it on the fact that nobody's getting sick. If tomorrow thousands of people who are vaccinated get sick, go to the hospital and die, well, then my opinions are going to change for sure.
Right. What about the Wynn question? Wynn Resorts employees will have a choice of having the vaccine, or they'll have to show a weekly negative. What do you think?
That's fine. Totally within their rights. I think if I was in the service industry, in the casino, I have not forced it on any of my employees, and we're at about 50%. Half said yes, half said no. But it's not a casino. There's not hundreds of people around. I think that I would probably require vaccinations.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I don't know enough about this to really speak on it, but I don't care. I'll just throw it out there anyway because I saw people are getting all angry about it. It seems like the state is kind of pushing hey, maybe your occupancy can go up as a property if you really push your employees to get vaccinated. And I saw people infuriated about that, and I was like, good. Well, what's the problem? You're not like jabbing them with it. You're encouraging your employees to do it. And if you're doing that, you should be rewarded with more people on your property.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't understand what the outrage was about on that. Good.
Yeah, if everybody who's on your property is vaccinated, you're the safest hotel to go to, even for unvaccinated people.
Yeah. All right.
What about Brady's question here? Does Wynn have to pay for that testing? Can they force employees to pay for it? How does it?
I don't know that the CBA is with culinary,
Right.
So I can't answer that question. I don't know. Everything I've ever dealt with, I don't even want to go there with that. What would I do? I would definitely offer to. Well, the vaccine's free, right? What the fuck are we talking about?
The test.
Yeah. Oh, the test.
If there weren't free tests available,
fuck that. I fucking make them pay for that shit. Like, if you're making me go through,
you have the
like
option.
A weekly, yeah. You get a free vaccine, or you're paying for tests. Yeah,
that'd be great.
Oh, that's already happening. There's there was a $500 bonus being offered by somebody's what national company was that? I can't remember, but I just saw a tweet tonight right before we got on. There's a casino in Reno that says if you show up with your vaccination card, you get a 25 chip free play.
I'm flying to Reno tomorrow. I did hear, and one of the things that I think is a problem with because I think rhymes with Shmamazon. I think that they are bribing employees to get it.
Yeah.
But then I heard from some employees who might even be watching right now, I don't know, that were like, I'm going to wait till I can get it through their program to get paid for it. I'm not just going to get it on my own. And I'm like, all right, now we're delaying people getting the vaccine because they want the bonus money for it, which I get why you want the bonus, but like, come on, let's if you're eligible, let's just go. Like, let's go get it. Let's not wait till everybody's paying.
Right. Well, can't Amazon just put it in for anybody who's been vaccinated at any time?
Right. You would hope so.
Fix that. But it's amazing the gymnastics people will go through to, come up on a couple $100 sometimes.
Well, if you're working for Shmamazon, you probably do need the couple $100 because they won't pay you. Shmamazon.
I was seeing this TikTok of, I don't know if I talked about this on the show, where when the stimmies came out and the $1,400 per kid, and the guy's in an orphanage, he's like, I'll take that one. I'll take 2 of those over there. Give me this guy. He's like, do they have to be the same color as me? No, cool. I'll take Zach over there. It was great.
I love that Justin Dolly on TikTok. It's so great.
Oh, it's great. Oh, dude, people are way too creative, man.
All right. Well, speaking of that, I have another TikTok because I knew Adam would like this one. I think Adam would love to be the guy who's on the second part of this. So we got some tough gal from, of course, Jersey, which is a nightmare. Let's go. All right. So she's got my vaccine passport. So you know what's coming here.
Karen.
Obnoxious broad.
You watch me breathe until I can't breathe. Shaking.
I think the COVID vaccine passport is such a good idea for so many reasons. It'll keep people safe in big venues. It'll encourage people to get the vaccine. But mainly, the biggest selling point by far is that it'll exclude these people. They won't get to do cool shit. And that is the biggest fucking win for us.
Okay. I know you love that.
I've said it 100 times
Yep.
on the show. I 100% agree. You want to be a part of society and do society shit, then get the vaccine. Or you're out. You want to be part of your own society where you don't get it? Fine. Nobody's going to force you to get it. Live your own life. Do your own things. You're not part of our society anymore. That's totally fine.
How many of your friends who were big Trumpers, how many are now anti-vaxxers?
They are
Pretty low number.
they are trashing the vaccine and like the people that get it and they're like, oh yeah, be real proud of yourself. You got a shot in your arm. Way to go, like that kind of thing. But they're getting it because a lot of their works are making them,
Right.
which is great.
But getting it voluntarily, you're a pussy.
Oh yeah, and like my take, which I've heard other people say too, but and I think Justin agreed with me on this too, of like that kind of like feeling that you got of when you got the second one, you're like, oh man, a year of not being able to do stuff, of trying to help out everybody not get sick, trying to help out people not die, and to see society come together and like rally to this point of being able to put together something logistically like this, all coming together when that like needle goes in your arm was like just a very cool feeling. Like to say that, yeah, you're getting roasted by my friend group for sure, but I'm totally willing to say it. I think that's absolutely the case.
Keep fighting the fight. Keep fighting the fight, tough guys.
Oh man, the one I'm hearing, I think the really difficult outreach is to the Latin and Black communities. Like they do not fucking trust this, and they're not pro-Trumpers at all. But like
I get that.
Yeah, you watch like Latin news. They are not in favor of this shit, right? They got their own conspiracy theories about what this is all about. And my point on that is not to, get too deep into our like racist roots, but the tests and the ways in which the minority communities were experimented on with vaccinations and medicine back in the day, that always happened to that group first, not to the white people. And here the white people are getting vaccinated. And so it's like the opposite, right? It's like the opposite of all the trends that the racist roots of our nation started in. So, I mean, I think hopefully we get there. I know there's a whole heck of a bunch of people in local grassroots like movements in the Latin community who are really trying to get people out there, and they seem to be making some headway. And so, I'm hoping it happens, and we can get back to normal. But I mean, I think we're going to be plateauing here at like 50%, and then we're going to be like, fuck, we need the 20% more of people to 30% more of people to buy in to get this thing done, and we're going to have to do something about it. I don't know what.
Definitely need 75 to 80 at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
That are there, and we are hoping to get that by Memorial Day, which I still think there's an outside shot. It's possible, but I think you're right. I think we're gonna have so many. What did we talk? We talked about. I mean, about a month and a half ago, we said the date was like April 23rd or April 24th, where supply would be greater than demand. And I think we're kind of on track for that. Like when people were asking us, I remember it was back in like the end of February, like early March, and they said, "Well, okay, when is the time we can go back to normal? When can we? If like it seems like we're never going to be able to." And we were like, "Well, I would say Memorial Day is probably about the right target, but like that date when supply passes demand for the vaccine is going to be a big moment, and I think that is coming up. It's coming up in about 2 weeks, where we're going to be at that point." And that is a big moment, but that's where we really have to start pushing people more and more. Like, hey, the appointments are there. Go get them. Go make this happen. And don't have
or just open it up. And the people who chose not to get the vaccine had taken that risk. As long as it's readily available to everybody else.
Well, what we don't need is fucking jackass moron quarterbacks telling people not to get it. We don't need that.
Who was that?
Just fucking some piece of shit in Buffalo.
He didn't say not to get it. I saw that quote. He said,
I need to see some science on it. What more science do you fucking need, you jackass? Fucking clown. Jesus Christ. But it is a big story in Buffalo, and I follow a lot of Buffalo media people who are like, literally, Josh Allen could tell people to jump off a bridge, and they would. Like that's what it is. Josh Allen is Jesus in Buffalo for whatever freaking reason there is. I know what it is because he replaced the black quarterback and he's a white quarterback. But he could tell people to jump off a bridge and they do it. So when he comes out and he's like, yeah, I just don't know. I need to see some more evidence. Now everybody is saying that. Like literally within 24 hours, there's a big shift in public perception of the vaccine because this fucking jackass. So if you feel that way, whatever, it's your right. Like I said, stay home. Don't go out and do anything. Stay home. But you can have that right. You don't have to get it. But shut the fuck up about it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the other thing I'm seeing is like I've had 2 different people from my office go to get the vaccine, and then when they got there, they're like, "Which one is it?" And they're like, "Oh, it's Pfizer and Moderna." They're like, "No, I want the Johnson & Johnson." They're like, "No, we don't have that." They're like, "No." They're leaving because they want one shot in the arm. I'm like, "You just went once. How many times are you going to go to get one shot in the arm? Like you take 5 trips to get one shot in the arm, or do you just want to go twice?" Like, I don't know, man. Hey, like I said, ultimately at the end of the day, if everybody has a chance to get it, I think May 1st is the number for me. Like that, everybody who in the state of Nevada who wanted the chance to get it had the chance to get it, and they didn't get it. Fuck it, open it up. Let's go back to the real world.
And just so we do know, and I read the thing that came out today, which was horrifying because we are talking about adults only that are eligible for this right now. 30 and 40-year-olds, biggest rise among hospitalizations right now, which is a pretty terrifying trend. And the amount of spread, even in preschools with the new variants, is very, very concerning. After-school activities and daycare has been frightening because early on, we didn't think there was much spread in children. And now with some of the variants, and that's what viruses do, they mutate and they figure out ways to spread and attack that they weren't able to before. That's concerning numbers. So that's one of the things I'm looking at. Like, man, if this continues, this is trouble.
Two things about those numbers. Number one, of course, the biggest rise in hospitalization is in the age group of 30 to 40. Because they're the only ones you haven't vaccinated. So, of course, that makes sense, right? So just because they're the biggest rise, I'd want to see the raw numbers to see if that rise is troubling in a raw form. So I don't know. 2, okay, it's spreading in preschools or it's spreading in after-school activities. Are any kids getting sick? Are any kids being hospitalized? And if so, is it based on underlying conditions? Can we, pinpoint which kids are susceptible to this so that when we get to the point that we can give this to children, the vaccine, which they believe that they'll get towards the end of this year or early next year, we can start prioritizing now which kids need to get it first. The ones with underlying conditions, whether it's asthma or what have you, or heart conditions, figure that out. But just because it's spreading, like we need to get past the idea of cases anymore.
Sure.
Now that we've vaccinated the most vulnerable population, we got the 70 and up, we got the 60 and up, right? Like now cases aren't as meaningful as hospitalizations and deaths. And
we are still seeing 700 to 800 people dying every day, which is, I know that we're getting close to the end, and like I feel like we should have some excitement. Like I said, like the optimism that you feel like when you get vaccinated, I felt was like a very powerful thing, and I'm feeling it. Like, we're not saying we need to have things in place until like 2024. We're like Memorial Day, maybe mid-May, Memorial Day, like that's probably kind of like a month and a half from now. Like nobody's like screaming gloom and doom, but like there are still things to be concerned about and to look at. And the fact that there are still that many people dying every day, like I think we are forgetting that. We're almost looking at it like, wow, this is over. It's not over. No, not until everybody gets a chance. That's where I'm at. Everybody needs to get a chance to have the vaccine.
All right, we'll go out on a positive note. Kirk said, got the shot, took a shit, chocolate shake, felt great. Nothing to be afraid of. Although on Friday, we'll bring in Willie Ramirez, who I think told the story last week. He'll tell the story of getting the Johnson & Johnson shot. And at one point, he thought it was worse than when he had COVID. So I don't know what was happening. But Willie said he felt like ass for like 2 days, and then it was gone like that. But it was pretty bad. So there's been.
So Brady asked a good question about, has Sisolak showed his hand on a date? I think he has. May 1st is when he's turning it over to local control.
And I've talked to some business owners who think that is very good news, especially in certain jurisdictions.
Well, for sure, in like 90% of the geographic area of the state, like it's going to be game on. We'll see what Reno and Clark County, Washoe County and Clark County do.
Somebody wants a restaurant announcement.
Well, you teased it, man, with the restaurant. It's going to take a while.
Right, man.
It's going to take a while.
I got to get all my other shit figured out, right? I'm like I said, I've got a government relations lobbying company I just started. Shout out to 1909 Group. That's the name of it. And got the podcast studio up and running.
Get the podcast business going. We got to get some people in here. For the podcast, I know.
It's like you asked yesterday on the show, like, what do you got going on? I'm like, what, is this not enough? Like, what more shit do I got to fucking juggle around here? Dude?
It was great. It was just like it was actually just an opportunity for you to promote the firm, and I'm like, okay, all right, relax. But you know what? I will tell you, our spot yesterday, I was in like La La Land. I don't know what I was processing with the entertainment tax on the Raiders. Because like all I thought of was like the teams are paying, and then you explained it, and then I followed up again. You're like, "We're paying, we pay, right, idiot." But I'm so glad you didn't rip my head off and be like, "Were you listening? Are you an idiot?" Because after I went home, I was like, "Yeah, I like didn't get what he was saying at all." I was like following up, like, "We're gonna stick it to the Raiders and the Knights." Like, no, they're just gonna here you go, go ahead, everybody, pay the tax.
Yeah.
So we'll hit on that next week because there's a bunch of stuff with that. So we appreciate it. Thanks,
Justin. We require a vaccine passport to get in the restaurant.
Yeah.
No.
I know. Kirk needs a job, man. We got to get this the restaurant up and running here. Kirk can come out here and then explore for treasure.